I'm going to be with a partner and I'm not going to tell them anything about this. I know a lot of workers that operate this way.
Yeah.
It's completely discreet. It's a complete secret. I know there's a lot of challenges in this model because you are constantly covering your tracks. You are constantly trying to find ways to excuse maybe where you were, what you were doing, how you have this money. It's not ideal.
Hello and welcome. Today I have my dear friend, Laura Desiree. Laura is a dominant figure in erotic entertainment, celebrated for her work as a live sex intimacy coordinator. She's a journalist, she's an adult industry consultant, and sought-after podcast commentator. She spent 7 years as the host and producer of the groundbreaking web series Naked News and now helms Eros Unbound, a confessional erotic reading event spotlighting sensual storytelling and creative expression. With over a decade of experience across broadcasting, adult media, and live performance, Laura is a trusted voice shaping the future of sex, art, and culture. Hey, Laura, how the hell are ya?
Karen, thank you so much. It's an honor every time I get to sit and chat with you.
So today I invited Laura here because I wanted to learn about sex work, which has a very negative connotation as something illegal and as prostitution. And as I've gotten more and more involved in this world, in this industry as an educator, I've learned that's not quite the case. So let's start by defining for the audience what sex work actually means and what it is.
You nail on the head with prefacing how complex this definition in itself is or seems to be for the general public. Obviously, we are existing in a modern world with such immense disdain for folks that identify in this way as sex workers. Sex work is the occupation of offering a sexual experience for a transactional fee. Now, this, of course, has expanded over the years. This is most traditionally, most famously, most notably, the transfer of money for sex. This is where you get escorting or full service experiences, and that is said to be the oldest profession there is. But in our modern world today, it's diversified so much. Sex work now encompasses all of these wonderful additional journeys, things like stripping, things like professional domination, positions like being a professional porn actor, being a cam model, being on cam all day. These are also folks that identify as sex workers. So it is a big red umbrella, and within it are many jobs and job titles. And there are so many more that are emerging constantly as we look to better connect with folks that both want to pay for some kind of a sexual experience or a sensual experience, and folks that want to monetize what their offering is in this realm.
Give me some examples besides what typically we know as prostitution of what sex work might be, what someone might pay for that is different.
Time at a dungeon with a professional dominatrix,
Okay.
Sitting online to talk with a cam performer, going to the strip club to receive a lap dance, going to a tube site to watch or pay for, hopefully you're paying for your porn, and buying the content that's made by sex workers that create content for sale.
And what attracted you to this work? How did you decide that this was the path you were going to take?
In my life, I have always found such a sense of liberation with the act of being prideful in my sexuality, with that sort of resistance to what the norm is of society. Society doesn't want us to be prideful about being confident in our sexual selves as women. That's not what they expect of us. Sure, those times are changing, but it's a scary thing to be a woman that says, I have a really rampant sexual energy inside of me. It's one of the ways I express myself. It's an area that I'm artful, an area that I am passionate about. And over my lifetime, I've pretty much donned every hat somewhere in my life of one of those jobs under that umbrella. So nowadays, I'm just a content creator and I sell content online. But in the past, yes, I've dabbled into all of those additional job descriptions within the red umbrella. And it started as burlesque for me. And burlesque is one of those professions or art forms that kind of straddles the line. Some people say that's not sex work because they're not even really getting fully naked. But a lot of burlesque performers say, absolutely, I identify as a sex worker because what I'm doing is of a sensual nature and I'm making money off of my nakedness and the anticipation of revealing my nakedness to you. So that one is riding that line. And that's where I spent over a decade of my life, and many other jobs happened while I was still anchored in burlesque. And still from time to time, I'll jump up on a stage and do it because it is one of those very ceremonious practices for me. It's what started it for me. It's what told me my body and my sensuality was something to be proud of.
I would think of it more as a show as opposed to sex work, which is why I love that we're talking about this, because this whole idea of sex work does not necessarily mean that you're selling your body for sex. But let's go to that, because sometimes being in a dominatrix or an escort or some of these in-person performances do lead to some form of sexual activity. And
Absolutely.
how does, I don't know how much of that you've actually done, or if you have, how does that affect you in terms of maybe, does it mean that necessarily you've started from a place of trauma and that's why you can do this? And then from that, how do you exist in other relationships when you're having sexual activity with, whether it's strangers or regular customers or whatever that
might be? So this is a question that is very often tackled by folks in sex work and in activism around sex work, right? Because so much of the general public has this misconception, this understanding that they've made for themselves that sex work and anyone involved in it comes from a place of mental instability, comes from a place of trauma, comes from a place of lack of clarity. Because why would someone go into this work if they were sane? Which is just to argue that this is not a natural kind of job. Here's the thing is that no, that is not the case. I will say it up front, loud and proud, that it is not the case that anyone who chooses to sell their body or sell their sexual experience comes from a place of trauma. That's not at all it. In fact, I like to flip it and say, one of the most radical things we can do is share ourselves in a sexual way, share ourselves in a sensual way. And you ask folks, what's your biggest nightmare? Most people will say being seen naked in front of an audience of strangers. This is something that the sex worker does on a regular basis. This is the kind of strength, bravery, confidence, pride. This is what we operate with. So when I hear the question of, oh, does this mean they come from a place of trauma? Every profession has folks that come from a place of trauma. You look at the way some of these finance executives on Wall Street, look at the way they throw themselves into work. Look at the way they avoid their home life and responsibilities and the deep bonding opportunities with their partner, because vulnerability is something scary and vulnerability is something they don't have any comfort around engaging with. That should also be looked at as, is that mentally healthy? Is that emotionally healthy? No, it's not. It's a behavior that is speaking volumes around maybe some areas that need to be addressed in therapy. I get very passionate about this because it's not at all an indicator of someone's mental stability, acuteness, wellness, should they choose to enter into sex work.
Good answer. Good answer. And sorry, I just want to go back because even as someone who's single and dating and not getting paid to have sex with strangers, you put yourself at risk. And no matter what, certainly as a woman, when you entertain somebody in your home, and I guess I would imagine that you don't do it in your home, but when you're in a private space and there's nobody there, you are always in some form at risk.
This is entirely the decision of the workers that are providing this service. Do you want to go about this work taking and hosting in calls from your house? Do you want to be available for outcalls and only join clients in their residence or in their hotel rooms? Do you want to work out of a shared space with other workers where maybe a group of you pitch in and contribute to the monthly rent on that? These are all the kinds of strategies and brilliant ways that sex workers have to be resourceful and professional. And again, it's like we don't consider this as the outside general public. How do people keep themselves safe in this work? There's trial and error with it. And of course, there are bad experiences. But again, a lot of industry is going to include bad experiences. And your question about how do you balance relationships? How do you have a relationship with people? Love relationships, romantic connections. It's not a one size fits all. I found that a lot of sex workers, they go about it in some different variations, right? There's a model that says, I am looking for a partner, and this partner is going to know everything I do. We're going to be completely open with each other. This partner is going to maybe be in touch with me about some of my job details, like whereabouts, where I'm going. Maybe they share a space together. There's that dynamic, which can work really well for folks. Hopefully, the partner that's not involved in the sex work is one that really has an open heart and mind to understanding the complexities of the job. Because when a worker finishes the job, and it could be one client, it could be 5 clients, when you go home, there's a massive transition that has to happen in the soul and spiritual self to return to yourself. There's also the model of, I'm going to be with a partner and I'm not going to tell them anything about this. I know a lot of workers that operate this way. It's completely discreet. It's a complete secret. I know there's a lot of challenges in this model because you are constantly covering your tracks. You are constantly trying to find ways to excuse maybe where you were, what you were doing, how you have this money. It's not ideal. And then, of course, there's the workers that say, no, I'm not going to be in a romantic relationship. I have friendships that mean a lot to me. I have companionships that mean a lot to me. But my definition of a romantic relationship just doesn't look like me with a committed partner that needs to know anything about my life with that level of attachment.
Interesting. I've talked to a couple of people, like when I was at the ASEC conference, I talked to surrogate partners, and I do think that, and I don't know if that's the kind of work that you do. I don't think you're more of the coordinator and stuff. You don't do a lot of escort work, as I understand it. I think it is hard to have a romantic relationship when you're performing, be it in adult film or any kind of sexual activity with other people. And if that is something somebody in the audience is interested in doing, I would not encourage the model of lying because that's essentially cheating.
Of course. No.
Unless it's a survival mechanism for somebody to get out of a relationship.
It's so fascinating. A lot of people say this, if you were in this work, how on earth could you be faithful to a partner? How could you maintain a fair relationship with a person? And it's really, I ask those folks to consider, do we ever look at professional actors and wonder this? Professional actors can adopt and embody long-term a character who is madly in love with another character. And that is not just 1 hour of physicality in a hotel room. That is months of portraying the most sincere, believable love for another person. This nitty-gritty of the physicality. I'm not going to be jealous of someone's fucking treadmill because it made them sweat and it made them feel good by the end. A lot of the times, this is just about having a release. For these clients, it's a lot about having an intense sexual encounter that permits them that beautiful big rise crescendo of climax, and then whoosh, I've rinsed it from my system. For others, yes, it is about the pillow talk. It's about laying down and being considered, being held in the gaze of another person. There are many reasons why clients seek out this experience. And I think that it's the same reason why many workers seek out doing the job. Some just say, wow, I'm really good at this. I am really good at setting a scene and fulfilling the desire of great sex. But to others, there is a cerebral element where we say, I believe in the power and the flourishing of these encounters. I believe so wholeheartedly in the healing opportunity of granting a human being some time to be felt, held, heard. I've said it in podcasts of the past. I think so much of the anger and so much of the violence that we operate with as a culture comes from sexual dissatisfaction and sexual shame of oneself. And that becomes a poison in the body. So I just encourage folks to really spend time examining their sensual and sexual selves because they're different. How do those areas of your life feel as you assess them?
Yeah, and I think probably some people disassociate while they're in the experience. And I think others look at it, it's almost like you're saying that it's therapeutic for some people. And so they're sex therapists in the true sense of the word. I like that. If this sparks something for you and you want the extended cut of the episode, you can listen to the full interview wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Taboo to Truth or hit the link in the description.